can't tell you how many times I've found myself as I try to follow Jesus in the same place through different seasons in life and different frustrations of just being defeated at my lack of obedience when it comes to my apprenticeship or discipleship to Jesus. As I've tried to be with him and become more like him, I seem to continually fall back into the same patterns of brokenness and sin that I don't like. I mean, Paul talks about it a lot when he says, the thing I don't want to do, I keep doing, but the very thing I want to do, I fail to do. This has been an ongoing thing in human existence for a long time, and maybe you yourself feel that way right now. Like, no matter how much you want to follow Jesus, you're just having a hard time realizing what discipleship to him could look like. There have been many times in my spiritual journey as a follower of Jesus, as I'm trying to become more like Jesus, that I just get frustrated. Like I hit a wall or I get stuck. Like all of my hunger to become more like Jesus isn't matched by knowing what to do to actually become more like him. I have all the desires in the world, but I continually find myself still living according to the world or still falling back into like sinful, broken behaviors that hurt myself and others. I've become frustrated and this tension has led me on a journey. And maybe you feel similar, like all this hunger to become like Jesus just needs a framework or just needs direction or something intentional to really help you grow systematically, step by step, in becoming more like Jesus. It was the very spiritual hunger I just described, paired with the lack of intentional discipleship in the Western church, that created this tension in my heart to think through what could we do as a church, what could we do as God's people to reclaim the ways of Jesus? Because the way we're living doesn't feel like the life abundant that Jesus promises his followers. And so that tension boiling up and creating like a desire that wasn't met by anything practical created wanting to know more about spiritual formation, wanting to lead our church into spiritual formation, wanting to figure out how to form ourselves more into the Christ-like character that he calls us to. I mean, Jesus was aware that as his followers, we would feel this tension. It's why he says in Matthew, "Are you tired?" He wants to know if you're worn out or burned out on religion. He says, "Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace." This invitation into learning the rhythms of Jesus' life, the unforced rhythms of grace as he calls them, is what led us to develop the rhythms of life. We want to think through our current rhythms of our life, how I describe them as being broken and maybe sinful in nature or following the patterns and rhythms of the world, and instead learn how to repent and walk in Jesus' way of doing things. As he says, "Walk with me and work with me. See how I do it." Are you interested in going on this journey, in stepping into this yoke with Jesus, walking and working alongside him, learning from the way he does it? I mean, the idea of rhythms of life is nothing new. It's been practiced for centuries throughout church history. It's sometimes called the rule of life, but it's a way of just intentionally structuring our life and thinking through it in relationship to the lordship of Jesus, knowing our identity in him and also what our responsibility is in him then. If we have a relationship with Jesus, what does it look like to follow him and to live in his kingdom and to work alongside him? It's not only what Jesus taught, and sometimes we focus on his teachings, which is great, but it's also how Jesus lived. And rhythms of life is described and is created in order to take that intentional look at your life and then compare and contrast it to the life of Jesus, to see where his truth glares into our deception or darkness, into our sin, and then repenting and believing. We want you to individually think about, Jesus, how would you want me to live in this area of my life? How can I be with you and become like you in this area of my life? What we call life categories. And then move into creating an actual rhythms of life plan that will create space and structure for relationship and obedience to Jesus, so that you spend time with him and obey his commands, more and more ever increasing what the Bible calls the ministry of reconciliation or Christian maturity or being formed into Christ-like character. So we invite you to join us and to step into the rhythms of life individually, but also do this in community with others Share with them how God is speaking to you and how He's challenging you. Share with them your plans to grow in Christian maturity. Hold each other accountable, pray for each other, and encourage each other. And watch what Jesus does as we, as a people, become more and more like His Son and live more and more in His kingdom and prioritize more and more His ways. Watch how Jesus teaches us the unforced rhythms of grace.